Hi, I'm Doug Russell, and I'm going to present to you the Angler's Guide to Sportfish, which is an interactive website that I created for the data visualization course in the summer of 2021 at Indiana University. So when I go fishing, I really want to catch fish. I don't want to just go out in a boat and ride the waves. So it'd be nice to have a guide to know when and where to catch sportfish, because when I do this, I put some big money into going out on a charter fishing trip. Over $4.3 billion industry in Florida alone, and you can easily spend over $2,000 for a full day fishing charter. So you want to go to the right spot at the right time. My expectations will be that we'll find Florida will be a prime location to go fishing. Potentially there'll be some seasonality in the catches, and we'll probably have somewhat limited data because not every fisherman tells you where their hot holes are. The intention for this is to create a user-friendly, interactive guide. We're only going to look at a certain group of species, as well as just a certain region of the United States. The site can be found at fishfinder.fishermanmedia.com, which is hosted by Fisherman Media and Data. Here's a screenshot of the site as you first come to it. In building this site, I used D3, Vega Lite, and Vega Embed, as well as Altair inside of Python in order to create the visualizations. The scope, geographically, covers the southeastern United States, which ranges from North Carolina around to Louisiana. And here you can see a map of that area. The scope of species of sportfish is blue marlin, bluefin tuna, yellowfin tuna, dolphin, also known as mahi-mahi and pictured here, wahoo, greater amberjack, and red snapper. So let's go fishing. It's July. I want to go fishing in Florida. What will I most likely catch? Well, a user can go to the site, click on the state of Florida, and they'll see a visualization show up. Let's take a closer look at that. Here we see a line chart that compares the average catch to the month of the year. We also have the species represented in different colors. Notice that the y-axis is in log scale, and I'll talk about why I did that in a little bit. So for the month of July, it looks like we're going to catch red snapper and dolphin, but other species are fairly consistent throughout the year, so we can go for those too. So how about some red snapper? Unfortunately, I didn't catch those, and that's not me, but those are some nice looking red snapper if you want to go to Florida and catch some. I hope you get some like those. Maybe you want to go to Georgia instead. Well, the user can click on the state of Georgia and get a visualization as well. I would expect probably a smaller catch amount just given the size of coastline in comparison to Florida. So if we compare the charts together, we see just that. We also see that Georgia doesn't have as many species as Florida does. But in this case for July, red snapper once again are as the highest. Initially, for this visualization, I was going to use a stacked bar chart, but unfortunately, dolphin and red snapper overwhelmed it, so I decided to use a log scale, which allowed the other species to be more visible. Perhaps you want to go for a certain species. We can catch some wahoo. Clicking on the wahoo in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Florida, we can see a heat map comes up. Let's take a closer look at this heat map. It compares the wave, which is a 2-month period, to the state. And there's a color scale for the average catch, where blue is the highest going down to yellow. And if we look at this, we see that Florida is the place to go to catch wahoo. Probably just about any time is good, but from November to February is optimum. North Carolina also has a good wahoo catch. Maybe we want to catch yellowfin tuna. We can see yellowfin tuna is the icon off the coast of South Carolina, and that brings up a heat map that we can take a look at. Let's look at that closer. Again, we have the wave versus the state, and we can see here North Carolina is the place to go, and between March and June is probably the best time to catch yellowfin tuna. Well, how far offshore should I go? On the map, we have a gradient that shows the farther out you go, the better off you probably are. Now, on there, I put a line to indicate 3 miles offshore, and this just gives you an indication of that's where your chances start to get better. The gradient is overall to the data, it's not specific to any species, and it certainly isn't to scale. So there were other work out there on the web that I found for different visualizations, and let's take a look at some of those to see the inspiration that I drew and maybe things that I could improve on from those in this project. One that I took a lot of inspiration from was this 1936 map by Gordon Ertz. And on here you can find relative locations for different species and some statistics like record catches at the time for those species. This has a nice old world feel, and I tried to take some of that artistic style into the website that I created. And who couldn't love somebody riding a tarpon in the Gulf of Mexico? Another visualization comes from Sea Around Us. Here we see that we have a stacked area chart that shows different types of fish, and we can look at it across several decades. Now this one doesn't give you a particular month, so you don't know when to go, but you can see overall fishing has been fairly consistent for the different fish groups. And you can also change what you're looking at the top. So interactive was good. The next one is from the MRIP query tool, and this is where I actually got the data from, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But the visualizations that come up here I didn't think were very useful. They weren't very visually appealing. Fonts were very small, the data was very congested, and the rows indicating the different charts use a different y-axis, so it was hard to really compare between the different ones. The data comes from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Marine Recreational Information Program. It's based on surveys and observations of recreational fish landings from 1981 to 2021. I collected this as comma-separated value files for each species by utilizing the tool, and here's an example of some of the settings that I used to download the data, in this case for bluefin tuna. So there were some problems with the data once we opened it up and started looking at it. There were some missing values. There really was no specification of what weight units were, pounds or kilograms, and the time was recorded in waves instead of months, which are 2-month periods. So I'll have to find a way to get a properly formatted date to work with. And of course, anytime you have fishermen telling you how big their fish are, they're going to tell you it was this big. So what are some solutions? I assumed the weights were in pounds, and if there were missing values, I ignored them because I added up the whole row of data, which had several different categories of observations and survey results. So I ended up with a total amount for any particular wave in a year. And for the waves, if I needed something that was date specific with a month, I just took it as the 28th of the first month of the wave. So what did I learn doing this? Prior to the course, I had not used Altair or Vega. The project allowed me to utilize those more in order to get a better understanding. Also, I now know where to go to catch those fish because of this guide. Future work, I want to fix the color consistency among the species of fish. I noticed at the end that when some states didn't have all the species, different colors were used. Also, we could make a pipeline to update the information automatically. I would like to include more species of fish and more geographical regions. This would allow users to see more, and by doing that, we probably need to give them more filters to work with the data for their own needs. Here are the references for the site as well as this presentation. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and that you go and use the site in order to help you catch some fish of a lifetime. So keep your lines tight.